You're listening to Campus Killings, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Below the Surface, and Killer Communications. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hi, Meghan, and welcome back, listeners. Today's case was an anonymous suggestion, and while I'm sad because we can't give a personal shout-out, I am glad that this case was brought to our attention because it allows us to talk about something that we don't normally get to discuss on this show, and that is wrongful convictions. Ooh. I don't know that we ever covered a campus killings in wrongful conviction area.
I don't think so. That's interesting.
No. And if you are a listener of Women in Crime, you know we cover that quite often. And we recently released Sandra Heem episode, which she is the longest serving wrongfully convicted woman to date. Okay, so this is going to be a two-part episode. And over these episodes, we're going to follow the journey of 21-year-old Alan Beaman as he was falsely charged and convicted for the 1993 murder of his ex-girlfriend, Jennifer Lockmiller. He was sentenced to 50 years and only ended up winning a direct appeal by a 2-1 vote. Today, he is one of only a handful of formerly incarcerated individuals to not only be exonerated, but to also have been granted a declaration of innocence. And I'm so excited to be able to share with our listeners what that process was like. I was very lucky to be able to access the Illinois Supreme Court appellate briefs for this episode. It's rare that we get firsthand trial information to share for these cases, and I just want to make a note that all of the details that I'm presenting on this investigation and the subsequent legal actions come directly from these briefs. We'll also have a link to them in our show notes for anyone who's interested in taking a look. But before we get into the details about Alan's case, let's take a look at the university where he and Jennifer met. Illinois Wesleyan University was founded in 1850 by a diverse group of civic and religious leaders who wanted to create a facility of higher learning for the greater Bloomington area. This group included teachers, businessmen, lawyers, doctors, farmers, tradesmen, and ministers. But as we have seen in many other episodes, starting a college isn't easy and it requires a lot of financial capital. And while the founders had an excellent idea, they did not have the capital to start it themselves. And it would take them several months to find a sponsor, but they ended up finding one, and that would be the Methodist Church. This meant the school would have to have affiliations and religious Methodist teachings as part of the financial backing. However, this did not keep the university from being open to students from diverse backgrounds and religious beliefs. By 1851, the university began accepting students, and instead of having a president, the school was originally run by the professors themselves under the supervision of a board of trustees. This democratic leadership was in place until 1855 when the board elected its first academic president. By the 1860s, the university was well known for its hands-on liberal arts education, and they were pretty ahead of their time in encouraging women and students of color to apply in the 1870s. Now, we're talking almost 50 years before most other colleges.
Totally progressive.
Over the years, the college expanded to include a school of liberal arts, a school of fine arts focusing on theater and music, and in the 1960s, they added a school of nursing. Today, Illinois Wesleyan, or IWU, is still well known for its majors in the fine arts, though it also offers 42 different undergraduate degrees. And while it is still affiliated with the Methodist Church today, the college is open to anyone, regardless of religious background. Like most private universities, IWU has small class sizes, which allows for personal one-on-one attention from professors and high scholarship incentives. But in the late 1980s, when Alan Beaman was looking at colleges, this school stood out to him for a more personal reason. Born in 1972, Alan grew up in a conservative, middle-class family in the rural outskirts of Rockford, Illinois. He was the younger of two brothers, while his mother, Carol, worked as a high school teacher in town, and his father, an IWU graduate in physics, worked as a mechanical software engineer. While Alan's parents geared more towards the sciences, Alan had always loved music and theater. He was very active in his middle and high school's stage productions, and he often sang in his church choir and played guitar for the youth service. But he had also inherited a mechanical side from his father, and by high school, he found himself building sets and working behind the scenes far more often than actually being on stage. By the end of high school, he decided that he would go to his father's alma mater and major in technical theater. His ultimate dream was to tour the country designing lighting sets for rock bands.
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yes. While he took classes and worked long hours on sets for the university's plays, by sophomore year, Alan met the woman whose brutal murder would alter the trajectory of his life. While I couldn't find exactly how they met in interviews, Alan said that he and Jennifer became friends first before starting to date during the summer between their sophomore and junior years. Jennifer was described as an extremely bright and creative young woman who was majoring in journalism.
She went to the school, though, correct, Amy?
Yeah, that's correct. And she was also musically gifted like Alan was. She had played piano since she was 4 years old, so it's not hard to see how a connection was formed between these two. Their shared love of the arts and creativity would have put them in similar classes and given them a lot to talk about. But despite having similar interests, their relationship turned tumultuous pretty quickly. Based on information provided in the trial briefs, Alan and Jennifer fought constantly and often publicly in front of friends and family. They also broke up and got back together 18 times over the course of the almost 2 years that they were together.
Oh, boy. Is there like a point of contention between them, or they just kind of rubbed each other the wrong way?
From what I understand, a lot of their issues seem to stem from them having very different ideas about the state of their relationship. So it seems that these two brought out the worst in each other. You know how some personalities just clash? But Alan wanted a monogamous relationship with Jennifer, while she seemed to want something more open and casual. And as you could imagine, this caused a huge amount of anger between the two. Jennifer enjoyed going to parties and having multiple partners, and Alan wanted a more traditional relationship. While Alan's friends in the theater described him as a kind, warm, and thoughtful young man who would never harm anyone, Jennifer's friends had a different view of him. Now, they claimed that he was obsessed with Jennifer and that he had a quick temper, and his treatment of Jennifer bordered on controlling and abusive.
It's always interesting how things vary from whose point of view it is, right? What you see, depending on which kind of side you take, or, hindsight. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like confirmation bias, right? If you have a view of someone, you're going to view their behaviors through that lens of what you think of them.
Yes.
Based on the information in the trial briefs, it was clear that Alan was both of these things. So both can be true, right? He was incredibly dedicated to his craft. He had a large group of friends and acquaintances at school. He was also beloved in his local church in Rockford, where he actively participated in charitable events, sang in the choir, and spoke on a frequent basis with his pastor. He was also a thoughtful son to his parents, and he had a close-knit home life, and that was very important to him. His professors also enjoyed him in class, and he had several great mentorships. But wherever Jennifer was concerned, Alan was a bit different. Letters he wrote to her over the course of their relationship revealed that he seemed incapable of realizing that she was just not a good partner for him. In one letter in particular, he wrote, quote, "I really want you to be with me and only me. I'm sorry I've been such an ass lately. It seems like every time I don't get my way, I freak out and do something stupid. I'm really trying to mellow out about things like that, but it's hard for me because I always expect to get the runaround." Now, this letter goes on to talk about how hard of a time he was having after finding out that Jennifer was seeing another man. And as college students can sometimes be in romantic situations, it appeared that both Alan and Jennifer tended towards the dramatic.
Oy. It also just appears that these two are like a terrible combo for each other based on what they wanted.
Yep. And as I mentioned, they broke up several times and got back together. And there were even a few recorded instances where one or the other would threaten suicide during a breakup.
Oh, no, this is terrible.
In fact, one particular time, Alan was so upset during a fight that he drank a bottle of Jennifer's nail polish remover and she had to take him to the hospital.
Oh, my goodness. This is really bad. Okay.
Yeah. And one of Alan's friends later told police that Jennifer, quote, effed with his head so much that he would just go crazy. It made him suicidal. But while they were always fighting, they also never seemed to be able to stay away from each other, even after Jennifer transferred from IWU to Illinois State University.
Do we know why she transferred? Yeah, I'm just curious. Was this because of him or was it something else?
That's a good question. I mean, some reports cite that Jennifer had suffered from anorexia in high school and that she had experienced a relapse while at IWU, and some say that led her to make the transfer. However, the schools are only a couple of blocks away from each other, so I feel like it was probably more of an academic or financial decision to transfer more so than a lifestyle one.
Okay.
And even if she was transferring to maybe give some space between her and Alan, again, the universities were very close to each other.
Right, I didn't realize that. Okay.
By the spring of 1993, Alan and Jennifer's relationship was finally coming to a dramatic end. Jennifer had an on-again, off-again sexual relationship with a young man named John Murray, whom she had often bought marijuana from. Alan had suspected that Jennifer was cheating on him, and in early June of 1993, he allegedly watched the two of them go into her apartment one night. He kicked at her front door repeatedly, which broke the lock and the door frame. And one of Jennifer's friends later told police that she and John Murray had to move a dresser in front of the door to keep Alan from coming in. Not long after this incident, Alan began to suspect that his roommate, Michael Swain, was also secretly seeing Jennifer. And he ended up being right, as he followed Michael on a night that he said he was, quote, going out with friends, and he watched Michael and Jennifer go into her apartment. On this occasion, Alan proceeded to knock Jennifer's door down a second time and was overheard by neighbors shouting, "I knew it. I know you were in there." Later testimony revealed that Michael hid under a pile of clothes in Jennifer's closet while Alan ransacked the apartment and rifled through Jennifer's trash bags for used condoms as proof of her cheating. Now, this seemed to be the end for both of them, as Jennifer allegedly told a friend that she wanted to dump Alan so that she could spend more time with Michael. And Alan had become such a mess that he was seeing a psychiatrist due to the relationship.
This is such a recipe for disaster and a lot of bad actions here by the people involved. I know they're very young and I understand that. But just all not I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but it just all feels so unhealthy. These are such unhealthy behaviors.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's leading to something, which unfortunately it often does. Around July 25th of 1993, the two called it quits, and Alan left for vacation to visit friends in Ohio until August 4th. Despite the breakup, Alan reportedly called Jennifer 8 times while he was away.
All right.
Whether she answered the calls or what they discussed is not known, but whatever was said or not said seemed to finally bring closure, as when Alan returned, he and Jennifer hung out for around 45 minutes at her apartment before he dropped her off at her class and said a final goodbye. He reiterated to her at this point that they were romantically done for good. He then drove the 150-mile trip to Normal from Rockland to start his summer job, working the night shift at his uncle's grocery store. Meanwhile, Michael Swain moved into Jennifer's apartment and the two began seriously dating.
Okay. Oh, all right.
And remember, that was Alan's roommate.
Oh, I thought it was, oh my God. That was Alan's roommate?
Yeah.
Okay.
But on August 22nd, 2 weeks after their final goodbye, phone records showed that Jennifer called Alan at his parents' home 28 times. While Alan didn't answer any of her calls on the 22nd, she called again on the 23rd, and this time he picked up. She said she wanted to get back together, but he told her no, he was done. She had cheated on him with his roommate, and he no longer wanted anything to do with her. And this time he really meant it. His friends would later describe that after August 4th, Alan was finally acting like himself again. He was happy in a way that he hadn't been in almost 2 years, and he was looking forward to his final year of college and bright future in the technical theater world. He even started dating a young woman that he had met in Rockford. With a new semester on the horizon and a potential new girlfriend, Alan was looking forward to a great finish to his college experience. But his whole life would change on the night of August 28th, when he was pulled over by Rockford police at gunpoint, handcuffed, and thrown into the back of a police cruiser.
And now, a brief word from our sponsors.
This is Rob Gronkowski from Dudes on Dudes with Gronk and Jules. Sunday mornings are sacred. I've got my game day routine, coffee, jersey laid out, and my lucky playlist. But the real game changer? New morning Uncrustables sandwiches.
I've always loved Uncrustable sandwiches, and now I'm all about the new flavors with 12 grams of protein. Bright-eyed berry or up an apple. Bright-eyed berry's got that flashy, finessey vibe, like your favorite slot receiver.
Up an apple, tough and reliable, like a do-it-all tight end.
And players love them. Did you know teams crush over 80,000 Uncrustable sandwiches a year? They know it's good.
It's a snack that can go with you anywhere, from the couch to the tailgate or even in the locker room. Soft bread, yummy fillings, protein packed. Once it's part of your ritual, you don't skip it.
Easy enough for Gronk to grab straight from the freezer.
Your new Sunday kickoff ritual starts here with the new morning Uncrustables sandwiches, packed with 12 grams of protein.
The new year means new health goals, not just for your body, but for your finances too. But did you know financial health is directly related to identity protection? You need LifeLock because your personal info is in endless places that are outside of your control. It only takes one mistake, and not even your mistake, to expose you to identity theft and lost funds. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points per second and alerts you to threats you could miss on your own. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's US-based restoration specialist will fix it, backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. In fact, restoration is guaranteed or your subscription money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or other financial losses from identity theft alone. Resolve to make identity, health, and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Visit LifeLock.com/iHeart and save up to 40% your first year. That's 40% off at LifeLock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
In later interviews, Alan recalls being shocked and confused by the officers' behavior, especially because they wouldn't tell him anything other than that they had some questions about a homicide back in Normal. But when they brought him to an interrogation room and read him his Miranda rights, he realized he was not being questioned. He was a suspect. And he didn't ask for a lawyer at this time, and this was for two reasons. Number one, he was in shock from the way he'd been hauled into the precinct, so he probably didn't even think about this. Number two, he hadn't done anything wrong, so he figured that if he just told the truth, they would see that he was innocent and let him go.
Which is a problem with why innocent people speak to the police.
Yes, research tells us that innocent people are more likely to waive their rights to a lawyer and other rights because people believe that if they're innocent, the truth will come through. However,
and they have nothing to hide.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I would say if you're innocent, a lawyer might even be more important.
Yeah.
At this point, he still didn't even know what he was suspected in. As after an hour and a half of questioning, Alan still hadn't been told what he was being questioned about. He did later explain that he was able to piece together that something had happened to Jennifer based on the line of questioning. So he asked them if she was dead. But while the detectives answered that yes, she was, they also accused him of suspicious behavior for, quote, knowing she was dead, even though he claimed he simply figured it out based on the context clues of what they were asking him. Detectives also found it suspicious that when they asked Alan to tell them what he had done all week, he started with the day of Jennifer's murder. Although at the time, Alan didn't even know that that was the date in which she was murdered, so that was pure coincidence.
Was he back at that time? Were they back at school and so they were in close proximity to each other again?
No. They weren't. And we'll talk a little bit about alibis in a minute.
Okay.
At around the 2-hour mark, Alan says he realized that the detectives were trying to get him to admit to knowing something that he simply didn't know. At this point, he says he ended the interview and called his parents to have them pick him up and bring him back to his car. They got in touch with a lawyer the next day, and Alan did his best to stay away from the police. But they came 2 days later to try to talk to him yet again. Now, I'd like to point out that after the initial interview, one of the detectives, Lieutenant Daniels, did not believe Alan was involved and wanted to pursue another person of interest, but he was overruled by the lead detective, a man by the name of Tim Friesmeier. And while it's easy to see now that much of the suspicion cast on Alan was based solely on Jennifer's friends' testimonies, the trial documents show that an enormously detailed investigation was performed. And from the perspective of a lot of the circumstantial evidence, Alan did look like the perfect suspect. So let's go ahead and take a look at the investigation. On August 24th, 1993, Jennifer was supposed to hang out with her friend Morgan Keefe. But Jennifer never showed up, which was extremely odd. Morgan figured that Jennifer was just busy with her summer class and her job working for the college's newspaper, so she assumed that she probably just forgot that the two had plans. But the next day when she tried to call, Jennifer didn't answer the phone. Morgan kept trying, but after 3 days of not being able to get a hold of her, she decided to go knock on her door. When Morgan arrived at Jennifer's second-floor apartment in Normal's downtown, the door was strangely unlocked. Now, later reports revealed that Jennifer never left her door unlocked. Some said that this was just her being careful, but others attribute it to her fear of Alan. So Morgan let herself in and was horrified to find her friend half naked on the bedroom floor, with a pair of scissors protruding from her chest and the cord of her alarm clock wrapped tightly around her neck. Jennifer's box fan had also been taken off a shelf and put over her face. Morgan immediately called 911 and told the dispatcher, quote, "I know who did it. She had this psycho ex-boyfriend. His name is Alan. He's a psycho and he used to harass her all the time and he used to break down her door." When police arrived, they found that there had not been forced entry into the home, and though the apartment looked a bit in disarray, all of Jennifer's valuables and her purse were untouched. So investigators quickly ruled out the possibility of a robbery turned murder. Just to give you a little idea of what the apartment looked like, there were dirty dishes in the sink, there was a kitchen cabinet door open, and there was an open bag of garbage on the couch. They found one of Jennifer's earrings by the threshold of the front door and her left shoe in the hallway of her bedroom, in the hallway by her bedroom, and her other earring was on the bathroom floor. When they went into her bedroom, there was a 10-inch hole in the wall, and Jennifer was lying in between her bed and a set of bunk beds. Her shirt and bra had been pushed up, and her shorts and underwear had been pulled down around her left calf. Though investigative reports said there was no physical evidence of a sexual assault. Though something to keep in mind for later, semen was found and samples were taken for later testing.
So there could be a sexual assault. Okay.
Could be. And I don't know why they said there was no evidence of a sexual assault based on the way her body was found. And that semen? They had semen.
Yeah.
We'll return after a brief word from our sponsors.
This is Rob Gronkowski from Dudes on Dudes with Gronk and Jules. Sunday mornings are sacred. I've got my game day routine, coffee, jersey laid out, and my lucky playlist. But the real game changer? New morning Uncrustables sandwiches.
I've always loved Uncrustable sandwiches, and now I'm all about the new flavors with 12 grams of protein. Bright-eyed berry or up an apple. Bright-eyed berry's got that flashy, finessey vibe, like your favorite slot receiver.
Up an apple? Tough and reliable, like a do-it-all tight end.
And players love them. Did you know teams crush over 80,000 Uncrustable sandwiches a year? They know it's good.
It's a snack that can go with you anywhere, from the couch to the tailgate or even in the locker room. Soft bread, yummy fillings, protein-packed. Once it's part of your ritual, you don't skip it.
easy enough for Gronk to grab straight from the freezer.
Your new Sunday kickoff ritual starts here with the new morning Uncrustables sandwiches, packed with 12 grams of protein.
The new year means new health goals, not just for your body, but for your finances too. But did you know financial health is directly related to identity protection? You need LifeLock because your personal info is in endless places that are outside of your control. It only takes one mistake, and not even your mistake, to expose you to identity theft and lost funds. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points per second and alerts you to threats you could miss on your own. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's US-based restoration specialist will fix it, backed by the $1 Million Protection Package. In fact, restoration is guaranteed or your subscription money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or other financial losses from identity theft alone. Resolve to make identity, health, and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Visit lifelock.com/iHeart and save up to 40% your first year. That's 40% off at lifelock.com/iHeart. Terms apply.
Jennifer's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was strangulation from the alarm clock cord. The scissors had been used to stab her after she died, and she bore no defensive wounds to suggest a struggle. However, it was impossible for the medical examiner to give an accurate time of death, but based on when Jennifer had last been seen, investigators surmised that she was killed on August 25th around noon. Now, that would be about 3 days before Morgan had found her.
That time of death is also not an exact science. I think it comes across that way in TV and other shows, but it's not so precise. There's usually a window.
The scene was dusted for latent fingerprint and palm prints, which was one of the only available forensic tests in the early 90s. And 3 sets of prints did come back from the alarm clock that was used to kill Jennifer.
Oh.
1 set belonged to Alan, and they were located on the bottom of the clock and at the back near where the cord was attached. 1 set belonged to Michael Swain. Again, he was dating Jennifer at the time of the murder and stayed at the apartment often. But then there was 1 set of an unidentified John Doe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Based on the evidence at the scene, lead detective Tim Friesmeier believed that Jennifer had to have known her killer, and as we often see, the first suspects are always significant others. So even though investigators knew that both Alan and Michael had slept over at Jennifer's apartment on several occasions, they became the 2 strongest suspects. But Michael had an ironclad alibi. He had been working at a bookstore in Elmhurst, about a 2-hour drive away, and his boss gave evidence that he was in the store from 9 a.m. until his shift ended at 3:15 p.m. Now, this would leave Alan Beaman, and police had already been told not just by Morgan, but by several other of Jennifer's friends that Alan was abusive. They told investigators that the hole in her bedroom wall had been made by Alan during one of their fights. They also claimed that Jennifer had confided that she wanted to break up with Alan on several occasions, but he threatened suicide every time, and he also shouted at her so much that she was afraid for her life. So going into the initial interview, we can see that investigators may have already been having opinions about who Alan was as a person, something we like to call tunnel vision. But Alan also had an alibi. In fact, on the day of the murder, he had been 150 miles away in Rockford. He had worked a night shift at his uncle's grocery store from August 24th into the 25th. He got off work around 10 a.m., went to a bank to deposit a paycheck, and then went to his parents' house where he made 2 phone calls before going to sleep. His mom came home from shopping around 2 p.m. and Alan was still asleep.
Okay, but his parents are going to become his alibi. Is that the problem here?
Sometimes when you have an alibi by loved ones, it's not considered the strongest. But I also want to point out that police had time-stamped security footage from the bank of Alan depositing his check. They also had phone data to show that he had made 2 phone calls from his parents' home.
And 150 miles is quite a drive. That's several hours.
Yeah. So on the surface, this seemed like an excellently corroborated alibi. And the police did have 2 other viable suspects to consider as well.
Oh.
Okay, so who are these 2 other potential suspects? One of them is a young man named Stacy Bubba Gates. And he told police that he had been in a committed relationship with Jennifer from January of 1991 to July of 1993. He also said that Jennifer sent him a letter in July saying that she was breaking up with him. But he refused to acknowledge the letter and referred to Jennifer as his girlfriend throughout the interview. But like Michael Swain, Stacey had a solid alibi. He'd been teaching all day at a school in Peoria, around a 40-minute drive from Normal, so he was quickly ruled out. You know what's interesting? All these other people are being ruled out for their alibis, but yet Alan's alibi was solid also, and he's not being ruled out.
I was just going to point that out. And interestingly, all these people have solid alibis. Okay.
Yeah. Now, the last viable suspect is a man that we've met earlier on. Now, this is John Murray, the man that Jennifer bought marijuana from.
Okay.
Jennifer had an on-again, off-again sexual relationship with John, and John admitted in his initial interview that he was trying to get back together with Jennifer in June of 1993. He also admitted that he sold her drugs and she owed him $20. But he too seemed to have an alibi. He told police that he left Normal around 3 p.m. the day before the murder to drive home to his parents' house in Rockford. However, this timeline was not initially corroborated, and he gave a second statement to amend his original alibi, citing that he'd actually left Normal on the day of the murder around 4:30 p.m.
Oh.
Now, this may seem suspicious on the surface, but the police investigating him took this to be a simple misremembering of the date.
How come his is a this is so tunnel vision.
I know. He also didn't seem to have any motive to kill Jennifer, even though he lived only a few blocks away from her apartment, and of the 4 suspects, he was the only one in the neighborhood on the day of the murder. I would say he has as much of a motive as any other guy that she's dating.
I do too.
But investigators felt that they had nothing viable for any of the suspects except for one, the young man that Jennifer's friends had called a psycho.
Right.
Despite his alibi, lead detective Friesmeier continued to follow the trail that he believed led to Alan. However, aside from the fingerprints on the alarm clock, which could very well be explained by the fact that he spent many nights sleeping at Jennifer's, there was absolutely no physical evidence to tie him to the murder. So Alan went back to IWU in September to finish his senior year, hoping that the police would finally just leave him alone. But every time Alan turned around, the detective was waiting to take him in for more questioning. Alan was often pulled out of class, accosted as he left the dining hall or the theater where he spent most of his time. But in the beginning, Alan was happy about it, especially after the detective gave him a warrant to collect biological samples and fingerprints. Alan just figured that this would be the one thing to finally clear him, and he was happy to do it. But as Alan sat for his last exam, he had no idea that Detective Friesmeier was waiting outside with handcuffs. In later interviews, Alan recalls that he finished his exam and went to the dining hall to get something to eat. Just as he was sitting down with his meal, Detective Friesmeier walked up to him with the usual phrase, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And Alan was used to this process by this point in the year, so he agreed, hoping this was the answer to all the evidence he had finally given. But as he went to turn out the usual door that would take them both outside, Friesmeier directed him down a different hall to the other side of the building. And as Alan followed the detective out, he was met by a wall of police cars. Friesmeier now informed Alan that he had to come down to the station. Alan obviously knew that this wasn't just for routine questioning based on the amount of police presence, so he informed Friesmeier that he didn't want to go. To which he was told that he would be arrested if he didn't agree to get in the car. Alan refused, so he was handcuffed right in front of the student center. And as Alan recalls, quote, "This was right in front of all of my classmates and professors and people coming and going around campus." When Alan arrived at the Normal police station, Friesmeier informed him that he was under arrest for Jennifer's murder and that he was allowed to make one phone call. He called his parents and told them that they needed to get a hold of his lawyer. And they did, immediately getting in the car to make the 2-hour journey to bail out their son. But this wouldn't be an easy task, as Alan had to wait 10 days in county jail before he had a bond hearing. That's a long time.
Whoa!
I actually think, isn't that a constitutional violation?
Well, you're supposed to get your initial appearance within, 48 hours?
Yep. 10
I don't
days,
know.
yep.
I don't know if it's not a constitutional violation, but it seems like a procedural one.
Yeah. After the hearing, the judge set his bond at $1 million, which meant that Alan's family would have to pay $100,000 to get him out. Luckily for Alan, his uncle was willing to post his bail by putting the money up against a chain of grocery stores that he owned. In later interviews, Alan described how much this meant to him, since his uncle was not a rich man. He worked very hard to build his grocery store business, and he didn't really have the money, but he was willing to risk his livelihood just to get his nephew out of jail. But posting bond was only the first hurdle, as Alan was facing trial for first-degree murder in a state that still had the death penalty. Like many innocent people, Alan believed that when all the evidence was laid out, a jury would just see how wrong the state was. They would see that he had not killed Jennifer, that he had simply broken up with her, he had moved on, and that her real killer was getting away with murder. He believed the jury would release him and tell the state to go back to the drawing board. However, as we'll see in part 2, Alan was unfortunately very, very wrong. Please join us in our next episode for Alan's trial, his incarceration, and his extremely difficult journey in taking back his innocence. Before we go today, if you'd like to support Campus Killings, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts.
Your subscription will get you VIP access to all the shows on the network that not only includes hundreds of episodes of ad-free listening, but also bonus content and early access to episodes. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting this show in the process. Head over to Apple Podcasts and search for either Campus Killings or AbJack, and you can start your subscription with a free trial. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Campus Killings is hosted by Dr. Meghan Sachs and Dr. Amy Shlosberg, with research and writing by Abagail Belcastro. It's produced by Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to follow Campus Killings on social media. You can find Campus Killings on Twitter with the handle @CampusKillings or on Facebook at facebook.com/CampusKillings. You can also visit the show's homepage at campuskillings.com. Be sure to tune in every other Saturday for new episodes of Campus Killings.